Welcome to the Agent Upgrade Podcast with your hosts Jasmine and Alan Corey, where we learn the strategies of top producing real estate agents so you have the tools to upgrade your own real estate career.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Agent Upgrade with Jasmine, and we ain't got no Alan today, but I am super excited about our show today because over the last little while, I've realized that here in Atlanta, we have some of the most amazing powerhouse women in real estate. And so I have decided to take it upon myself that I am going to go through and find all the amazing women, interview them, find out how they've survived and thrived in real estate. And so without further ado, I will bring you the most amazing closing attorney, Mehrnush Saadat. She is one of those women that has created a huge following. People that love her, people that use her services are absolute raving fans. There is no two ways about it. People that know Mehrnush, they know that she is an amazing closing attorney. She makes the whole experience absolutely wonderful from start to finish. And so I want to introduce you to her, and I want you guys to kind of look under the hood and see what it takes to be a powerhouse woman in real estate running your own business. So welcome to the show, Manush.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. Thank you so much.
I've practiced that like for a really long time. So typically on our show, what we do is we'll interview real estate agents and kind of try to look under the hood and see what tools and tips and tricks they have for creating a good business. But I feel that you see the transaction from start to finish in a completely different light than maybe a realtor or a mortgage lender. And so I guess I want to just kind of learn a little bit about you, learn, where you're from, how did you get to be here? How did you start your own business? So take it away.
Sure.
Tell us about Mehrnush.
Well, firstly, I did start in real estate as a realtor as well. I think that definitely forged a lot of how I got to where I am today. So when I graduated from college in 2004, my dad was building homes at that time. And after a little while, he was like, the market is great. You should get your real estate license and come sell my homes in these neighborhoods and all of the things. And it sounded awesome. So by the time, I got licensed in about 05, 06, and I started out on a real estate team with Keller Williams. And I learned so much through that experience and started selling real estate as a baby agent. And it was good. And I was learning a lot. And then the downturn was right around the corner.
Yay, super fun.
By about 2008, it wasn't so good. Things were rapidly shifting in my personal life and professional life. And I kind of just sat back and thought, well, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And, you make plans and the universe laughs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to law school. I'm not going to do real estate whatsoever. So it took a minute to get there, but And mind you, I was still selling real estate through the downturn. There is always real estate to be bought and sold. It doesn't go away just because the market shifts. I want to remind everyone of that.
Especially right now.
Right? And so during that time, probably closer to 2009, I would say, I started doing a lot of short sales. And, of course, as a buyer's agent, selling all the foreclosures there were. And I like we all do. If you've been in this business long enough, you have all the horror stories of, my favorite war story was showing one client 500 houses in a year. And then she bought. So it was really fun.
What did he end up buying? A $79,000 fixer-upper?
Right. Well, she didn't do that. She was looking for a nice house in Canton. So I was driving a lot, learned all about Canton, Georgia. But, it was a good learning experience. And I learned a lot about REOs and a lot about short sales because I had to know those things for my clients. So as I pivoted and took my LSAT and I started law school at Georgia State in 2011, what was interesting there is that it still didn't go away. A lot of parents wanted to buy for their law students children. So I started selling houses while I was in law school to everyone that was there, which was cool. And the market was still down, but coming back up. So I kind of had always done real estate. And when I came out in 2014, I had some internships abroad in London and Dubai, and I wanted to do international business. And I was really heavily focused on that. But there is also something to be said about water your own grass where it grows, and the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And so I sat back for a minute and I thought, okay, again, where do I want to be in my life? And, as much as I had great opportunities abroad, my entire existence has been in Atlanta since I was 3 years old. It's all I've known. And there's something to be said about driving down every street within an hour of the city and knowing exactly where I am. And, I sold that house, or my friend lives there, or whatever the case may be, just having that sense of home. And so I decided, okay, maybe I don't want to leave Atlanta. What can I do now? All right, I guess I can do real estate closings. And I fell back in love with it all over again, which is, I never really stopped. But I had a newfound love. The downturn was hard, and it was like, okay, what do I want to do if this isn't what I do? But I think if you're in real estate, you never really leave. You might pivot, but you never.
Yeah.
Forever. It's like the Eagles song, right? Hotel California, you can never leave.
You can never leave. Yeah. Well, but I think it's you made a leap and a change that's not pretty. It's not normal, I guess I should say. Typically, people don't go from being a real estate agent to like, oh, I'm going to be a closing attorney.
Right.
But, with stepping back and looking at it now, like, some 10, 20 years later, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, that's exactly what you needed in order to become this amazing closing attorney.
Wow.
Because you kind of understand the stress that our real estate agents go through. Like, that's like their only commission for the month. And, things start getting wonky, how to hold it together at the closing table. So, so I was hoping that we would maybe dive into some subjects outside of just learning how you run a business and all of that. Really, I wanted to just kind of make this as helpful as we can for real estate agents. That, like, the way I was imagining it is like, let's say that you're a realtor and you're sitting down together and you have a closing attorney. You can ask them all the questions that you're typically too embarrassed to ask at the closing table. And what the heck is a title search? Like, what happens? Just kind of get an idea of, like, what are some of the good things that our agents need to know that maybe are not super obvious. So if you have some things that come to top of mind, I've got a list of questions. So feel free to riff.
I'll walk you a little bit through the process in case for anyone who doesn't know. And then I'll tell you a couple things that I find really important for realtors to learn right off the bat and know. But obviously you get your contract bound, and then you're going to send it to your lender and your closing attorney so that starts our work. Otherwise we have no idea what's going on. One thing I find, it's a good thing to note right now. Sometimes we rely on our lender partners too much to send the contract over. It's really not part of their jobs. The realtors need to be sending it, your team, your closing coordinator, or you sending it to both of us at the same time. There are instances, not often, but I'll say, well, my lender didn't send it. Well, it's not your lender's job to send us the contract. So make sure you're sending your team the contract. That tells us to get going and get started. And then from there, we send that order out to our title examiner, who then goes and does the title search. And I can deep dive into that if you'd like.
That would be, I mean, is that like, does he go to like through a bunch of drawers at the courthouse looking for?
They can. Yeah, they can. Most things are done virtually with most counties today. So really, it's more like someone sitting at home probably and searching the records and getting what they need from there and putting it into a package of a 50-year search. So they're going to go back generally 30 to 50 years, depending on what we need, to show us the full chain of title and then point out any issues that there might be therein. Sometimes, and in some counties that are not digital, or if they have to go back further, they are actually going to the courthouse. So, especially in these quick timelines and quick turnarounds, what you guys aren't seeing is that, again, that person couldn't get what they needed online, had to go to the courthouse. And for example, during COVID, like, they were only letting in 10 examiners at a time into those record rooms. So that's not the case today, but still, for the most part, if they have to get in their car and drive there and do that for different counties and different courthouses, that's why you can't do a closing in 5 or 7 days. It takes them a minute to get out there, to get the title report, to put it back together, and to get it to us. And they also are typing it up for us and saying, here's all of your issues. So they have typing team and examiner teams, but that's what helps us prepare our work for the next level, which is then giving that to the lender and saying, here's what we found. Here are the issues we have to work through, or everything's clean. This one's great. Here you go. But either way, that's the first base of letting us know what we need from there.
So I have a question. I have a side story and a question that's kind of that I want to understand better. So one time I had a friend of mine, she bought a house in Canela Park. We did normal title search when she bought the home. And after she bought the house, maybe like 4 years after she bought the house, she did buy title insurance. Somebody came and said that, he was the rightful owner of this property because literally like 30 years ago, his dad had passed away and left the house to him and two other brothers, and he never signed a quitclaim deed when they sold that property. And so that came up. So I guess I've always been kind of curious. Of course, she had title insurance. Title insurance stepped in. They took care of it, paid everything off. She kept her house. Every happy story at the end. But it's always been puzzling to me, like, how did that get missed? And do you see that kind of stuff happen often?
Often, no, but does it happen? Definitely. And it's frightening for all of us to know that that can happen. I mean, there's so many different title things that can happen with title. But to put the story of your friend in perspective, I've had that happen one time where in our situation, the property had conveyed 20 times over since the early 90s. I think it was the late 80s, early 90s. And by the time it got to us, my examiner goes, I can't find this one deed for this one heir. I can't find, maybe it happened in the records, but it's not there for me to find. That's one of those cases, again, you're going to courthouses, you're looking, and records can go missing. So in that situation, the seller did not have title insurance. So guess what they had to do? They had to put everything on hold. He had to go pay an attorney to do a quiet title action to get everything situated before he could sell to the client. It took a year. Luckily, that buyer hung in there. And they did sell it a year later, but that's why if they had title insurance, there would have been a much better fix for that in the interim. So no, those things don't happen often, but they definitely can. And I can't exactly tell you what happened there. It could be that somewhere in the probate record, someone didn't look closely enough that there was 3 heirs and just went, oh, there's 2 and pushed it forward. And then we end up in situations like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of always use that story whenever my clients, I tend to talk to people about title insurance as the lender, just because I go over all the fees. And so, there is, for whatever reason, they always say, owner's insurance is optional, and that little parentheses that says optional, immediately people are like, I don't want that,
Right.
And so I feel like I'm always telling people like, no, you really, really need to get it. And I think it's, especially when you're a buyer, you got to get it. You buy it only once, right? And then you're set for, for the next
Forever.
however many years, because things like this could happen to you even after you sell the house, right? Like after you sell the house, they could be like, well, actually, this is where the error started. So I feel title insurance is one of those things that real estate agents also need to know how to sell, just because to me, it's not optional. I don't let my clients close unless.
I mean, I'm sure you do know, but we'll talk about it on the podcast. The reason that it's listed as optional is per TRID. When TRID regulations came out, they wanted consumers to always be protected and know that some fees are set. Again, our fee has to be paid. Your fees have to be paid. But the title insurance is an optional thing. They can opt out of it. But yes, it would be to their detriment, quite frankly, if they opt out of it. You've seen too many horror stories. And I mean, it's even up to just little things where I see old mortgages, right, that didn't get properly canceled in the record.
Yeah, like a HELOC.
Boom, they put a Band-Aid on it. It's not a big deal. If you don't buy the title insurance, though, they're gonna hold you liable. So they're gonna make you sign indemnities that says if this lender ever comes back for that $200,000, you are the liable party. We as a title insurance for the buyer are not. And so I think, again, just to have that peace of mind, it's part of your closing. It's just an easy thing to always make sure you get, so you never have to think about it again.
I think that it's critical. And sometimes I've had clients like, well, it's a new construction, right?
Right.
I don't need
I love
title insurance for new construction. I'm like, yeah, this piece of land has been here for a second, my friend.
Right.
It's not newly minted piece of land.
invented yesterday, right?
So yeah, even if it's new construction, get the title insurance. So what happens if a closing attorney, let's say a closing attorney makes a mistake at closing? How does that get resolved? And is that something that we need to worry about?
I mean, of course, I never make mistakes.
Obviously.
No, we all make mistakes. We're humans. Things happen. I'll give you an example of a situation recently, and how how it can be handled. So we had a closing recently where the last closing attorney was kind of a catch-all. He did a multitude of different kinds of legal work, which is never what you want in a closing attorney. I always say that's like going to, a podiatrist when you need a dentist. It's not the same thing. Don't do that. Or a general practitioner when you need someone specific. So he never ordered the City of Atlanta water bill. Just bypassed it altogether. Wasn't on the settlement statement. Nothing was there. And when we went back, there was a bill, and it was $500. It wasn't super significant. I've seen upwards of 30 and 50,000 before. Luckily, it wasn't that. But it came down to who was going to pay for this. And luckily, the clients did buy title insurance. But really, it's the attorney's mistake. And had I been him, I would have just said, okay, you know what? This is my mistake. I'm going to go ahead and cover it. I'm not going to inconvenience the clients with having to file a title claim and all of that good stuff. So he didn't opt for that, which is fine. Again, the clients had title insurance. So the value of title insurance right there for them. We're going to have to collect it and pay it at closing, but they will be able to go recoup it from their title insurance. And so there it paid for itself right away as well. But those are just one kind of mistake that can happen when you don't use the right kind of an attorney. General mistakes that can happen are like typos in names. So just make sure when your clients are sitting at the table, or when you get that settlement statement, that preliminary over from us, it doesn't happen so much on the buyer side, because there's a lender involved and you have to check their social and their credit and so many different things. So 99% of the time, we're going to make sure their legal name is right on those documents when we get them. But when we have cash buyers, I mean, I see all the time. I did a closing once where the last closing attorney had titled him as C.W. Evans. His name isn't C.W. His name was like Chris Elliott. His ID said Chris Elliott or whatever, Why would you title him with just initials? Who knows how those things happen? Those are the kind of mistakes that happen. I try to be as diligent as possible when we get people's IDs on the day of closing to look everything over to make sure we're not making those kinds of mistakes. But those are that's two examples of mistakes that can happen.
I think it's pretty important as a real estate agent, I would say, when you're writing up the contract, like write up the contract, look at the driver's license, like legal name, please. I know that he goes by CW.
Going to be on title. A lot of times people make that mistake too, where they don't, you're dealing with one party in a relationship, but they really do want their partner to be on title, whether they're on the loan or not. Asking those relevant questions, or they're in the middle of potentially a divorce. Are you going to change your name before closing? Are you just got married? Is there going to be a name change before closing? Those are really good questions to ask as well as we get closer. And that can be on the seller side or buyer side as well.
Yeah, it's a good idea not to change your name while you're buying a house. Just FYI.
It
It makes my life miserable as a lender. It's like, oh my God, that name does not show up on the credit report or on the social security number. Like, oh my God, this is bad. So what happens if you have a buyer and a seller who hate each other's guts? How does that go? How do you handle closings where it's really, really heated?
I mean, I have, luckily we've been really fortunate in the market currently for the last many, many years. Obviously, before in 2008, 9, 10, 11, we had a lot of those situations because everyone had lost so much equity, and it was a hard time. So in those situations, of course, we can always sign people separately, as we did during COVID and things like that. We don't see it as much today. I think what we see more, buyers and sellers don't generally have an issue today, but what I'm seeing more these days is kind of like couples that are splitting up. And they're both sellers, and they're just like, we don't want to be here at the same time. So we can always accommodate separate signing times as needed.
I like that. So I find that a lot of people get confused. Oh, the buyer all of a sudden is like, oh, I didn't know I had to be at closing. Right. And then it's like, yeah, you do. And so then there is like, oh, maybe we can do a POA. Maybe we can do a mail away. And I feel like most agents kind of fumble with that. So do you want to kind of set the record straight and
Yeah, absolutely. So on the buyer side, first and foremost, ask your lender. That's number one.
Yes.
Um, not everyone can serve as their power of attorney in most situations. And also mailaways on the buyer side are not the most ideal. Um, I can break down, why that's not great. But the power of attorney part is important. I'll let you speak on that too. But
Mhm.
namely, the lender's going to have certain criteria around who can and cannot serve. For the most part, I think you want it to be a family member. Is that right?
I think it can, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be a family member. It just cannot be anybody that's party to a transaction,
Okay.
right? So if they're in any way related to the lender, if they're in any
Of
way
course.
related to a realtor, like the
Yeah.
realtor's daughter can't do it, right? Or my
And
son
with the
can't do it.
we don't want the liability of that because we are interested parties in the transaction.
Yeah.
It can absolutely be a separate attorney. We've had those situations where, if the lender wants it to be an attorney, we look into our pool, attorney, like I'll call an attorney friend from law school, are you available on this day and time to come in and sign on behalf of this client? Obviously they're going to charge their fee as well as
Mhm.
our fee,
Mhm.
the documents, but those are good options.
That is good to
Seen
know,
some
yeah.
lenders require it be a family member, and I don't know if that's an FHA specific thing or why, but
Yeah,
some.
that might be because I don't think it's a conventional,
Okay.
it's not a conventional rule, so it must be an FHA.
And that's
FHA tends
what
to
we
be
say
a
ask
little bit
the lender. Make
specific.
sure that you know who can and cannot serve and who's allowed, and then we can go from there. But what we're going to ask is that you send, generally the law firm that's closing the transaction needs to draft the specific power of attorney. It is
Mhm.
specific to just our sale, nothing else. They don't have power of attorney to go, into your bank account or anything like that. And so we want to see a copy of their driver's license because we've never known them before and no one has their information, to make sure that we're drafting to their legal name. And then we can get it quickly drafted and sent over to the client to sign with a notary. It's
Mhm.
also not an e-sign situation. A lot of people, we're not quite there yet to just e-sign all of these things. Maybe sooner than later, but not yet.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, they'll physically sign with a notary and a witness, and then we'll get it ready for closing.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I think the most important thing, we have a little survey that we send out to the real estate agent and the buyer the moment we get the contract, where we are like, is there a chance that you're not going to be at the closing? Like, I want to know day one because I need to underwrite it a certain way. I need to have it approved on my end. And so in general, it cannot be anybody that it's anyway in any way related to the transaction. Like anybody that's getting a $50 bonus if this thing closes, like, no.
No.
You may not have any kind of financial interest in it, in this thing, but it's good to know that it can be somebody like an attorney
Yes.
outside the transaction. And then anytime you're doing a mail away, we always have to have a little bit of extra time. So
Yeah. Yes.
because it
Yeah,
got
and buyer mailaways are not preferred. I'll talk about that a
Mhm.
little bit.
Yeah.
They are much more complex. We do specifically, it can't just be any notary. We specifically work with certain companies that do understand how to execute loan documents for the state of Georgia. So we have to go
Mhm.
through those companies and facilitate with them. They charge their fee as well. And then we have to coordinate with the lender to make sure we have documents a few days in advance. So the notary can go meet with them wherever they are. Let's say they're in, Seattle, the day before closing, to sign the docs that day to get them to us on the day of closing, because we are a wet funding state, meaning we need those wet signed documents on the day of closing to be able to actually consider it closed. So all of that takes much more coordination. It's not impossible, but it's a little more challenging.
I agree. And along those same lines, I was also thinking about, like, I know that, for example, I had a mail away in New York, and I think that if you're signing in a state that requires a closing attorney,
Mhm.
and you actually have to sign it in front of a closing attorney as opposed to a notary. At least that was the case in New York. New York is special, we know that. But
Yeah.
you had to actually go to a closing attorney's office and sign in front of a closing attorney as opposed to just a notary that we would normally do. So I think it just depends on which state you are physically in
Yeah.
where you are signing the mail
Yeah.
away.
I mean, the other thing we both know is California has some extra documents that have to be signed every time that
Mhm.
stamp. So that's a factor too that we have to think about too. Of if we have to know where they are, and then coordinate from there all the little pieces that go along with it.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of the things that that's I think every state is different, but here in Georgia, we only have one closing attorney per transaction typically, and the closing attorney represents the lender. So it seems that the closing attorney is really helping everybody. Like you're not just watching out for me, even though you're my best friend, but you don't work for me. But yeah, so talk a little bit about that. From how does that work? And
it is confusing because I mean, technically the buyer is paying our fee.
right.
Then if the seller's offered closing costs, they're paying it. But then we represent the lender. But like you said, we're really, I always tell people, really, I'm a neutral party trying to get everyone to the closing table. The reason we say I represent the lender is my job is to clear title to protect their asset. So yes, in that sense, I'm protecting the lender and the buyer. And that is my job, to make sure that title is cleared and all conditions are met. But again, I feel it really does feel very neutral from my perspective. I just want to make sure that everyone is protected. I want to make sure the sellers, have a good experience and they're protected. And I want to make sure I clear title. But again, just as much as that, we want to make sure that, there's no wire fraud for the seller. So we're double checking wires, we're double checking their payoff and their payoff wires to make sure all of those numbers are right. So really, we're protecting everyone to make sure everything gets done smoothly. So it's an easy process. And then they just have to do the hard stuff, which is move.
Yes. It is, you brought up wires. I think we would be remiss to not talk a little bit about that. So, I had a situation many years ago that I will never forget, where I had a client that was actually a very tech forward kind of a client who mistakenly, just took the instructions that were sent to him when an email that looked like it came from a closing attorney was literally off by one letter. The closing attorney's domain was off by one letter. And so he sent the money to the wrong wiring instructions, and the FBI got involved. We never found the money. It was gone. And so I have been like, I freak my clients out. Like, I'm like, don't you dare wire based on an email. Like call Mehrnush, verify over the phones. I freak my people out because of that experience. And so I want to just kind of hear from your end. Have you had really weird stuff like that happen? And how do we make sure that people understand?
Yeah, I have to say, I have been thus far very, very fortunate to never have that happen to me. But of course it exists, and it has to be acknowledged. The best thing, of course, you always want to call. Anytime you're wiring money, you want to call and verify those wire instructions, and not just even calling from the phone number that's in the email. No, Google the phone number, confirm it with your realtor, but Google the phone number, the law firm that you're sending those funds to, and call the number from online, and then verify the instructions with them. Ganic uses secure portals. We use certified ID, wherein it's a two-step kind of authentication. So we need the client's email address. So to all of our realtors out there, make sure when you're sending your contract over, you are giving us your client's cell phone number and email address, because that enables a lot of our secure portals. So when we send them the email, and then in order to log into the email to get the data, it's going to pin their a code to their phone. Which keeps it as secure as we can get, so that they know they're opening something that's legitimately from us. And we had both of those items to get them what they need. Same for sellers. We use those same portals for them to give us their wire instructions. Also, we're going to confirm those wire instructions with them at the table and make sure that what we got from them online was really what is right. And then when it comes to payoffs, we're seeing some increase in fraudulent payoffs being faxed over to law firms right now. And so it'll look exactly like that. And I don't know how. I mean, these people whoever's doing these things, they're smart. They have methods, because the payoff looks 100% legitimate, but the wire instructions that will be attached are different. And so again,
that sucks, huh?
So scary, right? We have to think about, realtors, through no fault of theirs, but they're sitting at Starbucks and logging into their emails, and, then they go to the next coffee shop or the next hotspot. And so those are places where these hackers are going, ooh, this is real estate related. I'm in. Let me go now figure out who to email, who's in the middle of a transaction. That's one way they get it. I'm not faulting but anyone, right?
Yeah.
Sitting in an open portal type of internet service. You're checking your phone at the airport, like all that stuff. So the verification is as good as we can get to call to make sure it's legitimate. And then again, for sellers, of course, too, when you're submitting your information, if you're submitting it in any way that feels unsecure to you, call, verify again, make sure that everyone has your correct information before you just assume that it's going to be okay. I will say, where clients do get a little scared is, we've had the closing at 11 and it's 2 o'clock. I don't have my wire. Firstly, wires aren't always so instant.
Mm-hmm.
They're 5 minutes. Sometimes they're 5 hours. They do go through the Federal Reserve. They go through a lot of checks for a lot of different reasons. But I will say, generally, if I key in the information and it's for Jane Doe and here's her account number, it's going to process. If you gave me the right account information, or if it's off by one digit, if it doesn't match to the Jane Doe account, it'll bounce. It's not that situation where people worry so much. Well, I might have given you the wrong information. It was off by a digit. Well, I'm going to have to wait till it bounces at this point, but 99% of the time it's fine because that account information with your name isn't going to match and it's going to be okay. So I want everyone to know, once it gets into our house and we've done all the checks that we can, majority of the time, the processing of the outgoing of it is going to be okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I think that just being extra careful, and then also as a real estate agent, just making sure that your buyers, sellers, it's important. It goes slow. Sometimes people feel like, oh, it's such a pain in the butt to go down to the bank and do the wire.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're sending $100,000. It would be more convenient to do it on your phone or to do it at home. But sometimes I'm like, I'll just go down to the bank.
I really prefer if it's possible for people to, I think, make an appointment, go to your bank, sit there with them in person and get it done that way. Again, you and I have both seen too many instances where people will accidentally send an ACH and not a wire because they're doing it on a portal.
Yeah.
ACH is not the same thing as a wire. It can take, 3, 4, 5 days to process. So we definitely don't want that. So yeah, going to
the ACH, the reason we don't like ACH is because ACH can be recalled, right?
Correct.
They can send you 100,000 and then pull it back the next day. And that's why we don't want it.
It's literally like a check. It's a digital check is what you're sending, and checks aren't allowed as we all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember this one time I had a buyer. This big burly guy was buying a house, and we were actually going to the closing together, like each in our own car. And he was like, "Hey, do you mind stopping by the bank with me and like walking me out with with
this- all the cash?"
I was like, "Yes, I will be your bodyguard, but no, we cannot do cash." He's like, "I thought I was going to walk out with a suitcase with 500 grand to walk into the closing." I was like, "That would be funny, but no." Oh man, that's
and you think that's like an old story. I had a client this year that really thought he was going to go to the bank and get cash and couldn't understand why he couldn't do that. And I was like, no,
it's not going to work, my friend. I love you, but no. But I have to get a wire. That reminds me when, speaking of the good old days, when my husband Jeff, he was in a real estate agent, and there was this condo indicator like right across the street from the pool, Glen Lake pool. Anyway, and it was listed for like $21,000, something stupid. It should have been like 210,000, like literally, but it was listed like for $21,000. And so Jeff's client was like, "Hey, I really want to buy this condo," and it wasn't a typo. They were actually selling it for like $21,000. And so they get it under contract. And as part of due diligence, they requested proof of funds. Well, this particular client was a cash buyer. Cash was the only kind of money he knew. I don't know. Maybe he hid it under his mattress or something. I have no idea. So literally he walks over to our house and he comes to my dining room table. And as proof of funds, he lays out $20,000 in cash. And we put the newspaper next to it. We took a picture.
Oh, goodness.
And sent it off as proof of funds. It was one of those, Bank of America, they were selling thousands and thousands of
units. Did you submit a photo?
We submitted a photo of it, and they took it. They didn't ask any questions. I was like, somebody got a good chuckle out of this, I'm sure.
That's funny.
It felt pretty gangster.
Our condo is worth now.
Yeah, it's probably worth like $200,000-$300,000. Yeah, it was a good move. It seemed too good to be true, so I think that's why most people didn't react.
Right.
But he was looking out for his clients. So it was a good one. So Okay, so we are about halfway into our conversation, and I want to switch gears now. I've kind of quizzed you on all,
Sure.
unless there is something else like specific to law that you want to talk about. I want to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit more about, hey, being a woman, running your own business. You kind of went through some transitions
Yeah.
lately. I want to kind of learn a little bit more about that. And in general, just let's just kind of take the conversation in the direction of like, yeah. So I feel real estate amazing, great opportunities. I feel real estate is pretty male dominated, but I also feel that there is relatively equal opportunities for women to thrive in this business. I have personally, I have never felt, even though like the mortgage industry, like stuffy, conservative, mostly old white men every which way you look.
Yeah.
And so, being a girl and being a big producer is kind of like, oh, there's me and there's 28 guys.
Right.
So, but I've never felt that I've had like a glass ceiling on what I can do being in this business.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you feel about the opportunities? Like, I know being on the law side of things is a little bit different, but at the same time you are your own business. You've always kind of
Yeah.
run your own thing. So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, when I first started out as a closing attorney, which would have been, like I said, 2014, 2015, surprisingly, it was still a white male dominated industry. There weren't a lot of women. And
Mhm.
when I initially started out looking for work, I knocked on doors of the few female closing attorneys I knew, and there were very few in the
Mhm.
in-town Atlanta area, especially. Since that time, I'm happy to say that it's grown a lot, and there are more women in this industry, which is a really rapid pace of
Mhm.
how many more women I see, which is really cool. But I think what I focused on was being that outlier. I think and one of my main pitches, which was really truly how I felt when I first started the firm, was, listen, ladies, I have been a realtor. I know how hard it is. I know how hard you work to get that commission. I know how hard you've worked for 30 days while you're also trying to get your kids ready in the morning, get them out the door for school, do all these things, cook dinner, and be a superwoman that we're all trying to be in today's world, and do all the things and wear the hats and be successful career women. And I understand and I get it. And I want to support you in that, which in turn allowed for people to support me too and support my business and want to be part of that growth for me as well. So I think it definitely was challenging. And I was a very um, young law firm owner. I mean, when I opened
Mhm.
the firm, I was 33, 34. So I was relatively young and a woman. So I had a lot of things against me where a lot of other attorneys didn't take me as seriously as they should have, most definitely.
Mhm.
And I'm really proud of what I was able to build and do, but it definitely came because of the support of the women in the in-town community, whether that was lenders, whether that was realtors, and other closing attorneys as well. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think that it's really important to understand that it's a big industry, but it's also a very close knit
yes,
community,
yeah,
and it's I learned early on that you have to you have to respect and treat everybody in a way that I know it sounds cliche, the way you want to be treated,
right,
but it really is. It comes back. It comes back to you, and it's such a small community that literally there is not a client, no matter how unhappy I may be with whatever situation is. No client or no real estate agent is ever going to hear me be upset
mm,
or cuss them out or say something that is unprofessional. And I think that is critical because even though I'm upset,
mhm,
I'm not going to take that out on my client.
sure,
And like even like I had a conversation, my son is 20, and so he's summertime, he was around here, he was kind of listening to me, and I had this really amped up client. I had him on speakerphone, and he was just really kind of just like one of those guys that was just kind of like, I don't
I
even know.
type.
I don't even know, like, right.
Right.
And you know, I just had like this, for me, like, I just have this, my focus in conversations like those, when people and emotions are really tense, like, I'm like, my only job here is to de-escalate,
Right.
soothe, de-escalate, soothe. I will apologize. I will fall on the sword a
Yeah.
thousand times.
Sure.
I have no, there's no place for an ego. There's
Yeah.
no, even though I know I did everything, I bent over backwards. I, I just about created a miracle for you, but
Right.
I'm not going to say that
Right.
because right now something is making you unhappy. Right. And so you just kind of have to get into that place.
Right.
Um, and it can be difficult, but I think as a closing attorney, um, I think that that has to be like, you literally have to put that cape on.
You know, I'm laughing as you tell your story because no, I think majority of the time you're right, but I do think, and I think anyone that works with me can tell you, is I'm just authentically me, and I'm going to tell you what it is at any given moment, which luckily has been okay for me in business. But I also feel that um, of course, not that the client is always right, but of course we are professionals in our
Mhm,
industry and we do,
mhm.
of course, act in that manner. 100%.
Yeah.
Um, but I go a little bit different, and I definitely I don't want to be, I've never wanted to be like a passive woman. And I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying
Mhm,
I've never wanted to be like, okay, sure, okay, sure. That's never been me. I run a very strict, firm line in the same way that men do. That
mhm,
they get to get away with, that I
mhm,
think that women haven't. And
mhm.
I think it was good for me to do that. And I don't think I know how to be any other way. I don't know if it's my Middle Easternness, my stubbornness, just who I am as a person. But again, always trying to de-escalate the situation, always trying to make the clients happy and appease them. But at some point, I do think that, and I hope more women are taking that ownership of, you know what, I don't have to do this just because I'm a woman in this industry, or I don't have to placate this situation. We can do what's right for us and still
Mhm.
come out successful and powerful. And I think that's really important too.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a fine line that you walk, because I agree, like, just because you call and yell at somebody on my team about something,
Yeah.
um, that is not going to change the outcome.
Right.
Um, I am still, the line is still very firm.
Right.
If he said
Right.
there is no way we can do this,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how much you yell or
Yeah.
scream or
Well,
whatever. It's just not.
hence in real estate. Right. It's
Mhm,
like I've been in the two most stressful industries that people can do. I was in the wedding business for a while, a long time ago, and
mhm.
now in housing. And those are the two biggest purchases and the two biggest things people do outside of a car, right? Those
Yeah.
are the biggest things that they are the most stressful things people are doing. So we have
Mhm.
to be in positions where we make sure that we kind of like soothe them and calm them and bring them down. But to your point, we can't work miracles if the numbers don't work, if the title's not clean, and also if you're just, calling and berating for no reason.
Yeah, if
Not
you're ordinary, yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, that's cool. I get it, but no, it's not cool.
yeah.
And I think, especially as real estate agents, there tends to, sometimes I think that real estate agents go into the mode of like, I'm working for my client, and then they kind of try to railroad everybody
Yeah.
else
Yes.
around them, and it's like, throw this person under the bus, or the appraiser sucks, or the closing
Right.
attorney sucks, or the
Right.
lender sucks. It's like, you got to have your friends,
Yeah.
right? Like, when you call a closing attorney and you're like, oh, you suck because blah 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 blah,
Right.
it's
Right.
really not going to help your cause.
I think we're both fortunate that we work with some of the best in our industry.
Exactly.
These people have become our friends. And I think that's really important too with what we do. Like our realtors are our team. They're an
Yeah.
extension of my team. You're an extension of my team because we work together so frequently. And I love that I can pick up the phone and go, "Hey, I'm having this issue. Can you help?" I very rarely have to do that, but
Mhm.
that's the benefit. I don't think we tend to work with people that are going, "So and so sucks," or "So and so sucks." And I'm like, if someone were to tell me that about you, I'd be like, "That's not true. I work with her every day. She
Yeah,
does
exactly.
that. What did you do?" But no, I mean, I think to your point, we do have to, as women in business, there are more, there's more fear around how we have to act in business to
Mhm.
some extent. So there is a little more tiptoeing that we've had to do in the past. And I think and generally, right, people, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it, people don't talk to men the way they talk to us in a lot of situations, or in the past. I do think that's changing. I do think, again, as we assert our power and we become more successful, and our business grows and people come to know us, that doesn't happen as frequently, I'm thankful to say. And we've also, again, surround ourselves with good people, and most of our realtors bring great clients, right? Like you bring forth what you're like it's gotten better, but I do know that those things exist, and you just have to kind of navigate each one as it comes.
Yeah. And I think also just being the longer we are in business, the more we can help people, other women especially, navigate and kind of bring them into the business. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really enjoying these podcasts, because I feel like there's things that you and I have learned over the last 10, 20 years that when I first started, that wasn't a thing. I was just like extremely enthusiastic, like, positive thinking, affirmations out the yang kind of girl, from the time I was 12 years old. So you couldn't stop me even if you wanted to, right? But and so a lot of the things that people maybe perceive as hangups or as blocks to their success is just not something that I worried about too much. So I just didn't know what I didn't know, and it kind of worked out in my favor. But I do want to be that voice of upliftment, and I want people to feel that being a real estate agent is a very viable career for women, specifically because it's kind of weird, because like sometimes people feel like when you're in real estate, you're always working. But at the same time, I tend to think of my work, you're maybe a little bit more scheduled than realtors are, but like I tend to think of my, just like it's all my life, right? There isn't necessarily a stop and a go. Like I'm the one on my team that's on call every single weekend. That's just my thing. I'm always on call, and because I know that's on the weekends is when some of the hard stuff gets done. That's when the realtor needs to pick up somebody because they've got 12 other offers they're competing against. And I can't have, an admin picking up the phone on the weekend when stuff is really, really hard. You got to make those hard decisions. But I think for me, I don't resent that. I don't resent working on the weekends, because to me, that's my power time. That's when I get to connect with my realtors. That's when I get to.
And, in contrast, that's what I hated about being a realtor. So, I still have my license. I don't really do much anymore. I refer business as it comes to me out to the realtors I work with. But that's where you have to kind of know your personality and what works for you. I think your perspective is beautiful. You're right. It is a part of our life. And now that I'm on this side of it, I do have that personality. For whatever reason, real estate for me it's hard. It's so hard. You really have to have that attitude or you can't be successful, because it is frustrating to take that phone call at 11 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning, when you're on vacation, all of that. But if you have the right attitude about it, it is absolutely a very fulfilling career. I mean, you're really helping people fulfill their dreams. You're part of their process. You're a therapist. You're getting them through something really hard and challenging and helping them navigate what that looks like. And as are you, right? You're helping them set up their financial future. You're navigating a lot of their stuff that they need to look at in their paperwork and getting in order for them. These are really important things that we do for people, but having that perspective is really important, and just saying like, okay, this is just my daily life. And so from my seat now, I love it 10 times more than I did being a realtor, because it is a really hard job, nonstop. But I agree, it is a very fulfilling, and you can be very successful and find great joy as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to treat it like a business.
Yes.
Right? If you treat it like a business, you invest money in it. It's not like, oh, well, these flyers are going to cost $180. I don't want to spend money on it. You have to invest money in your business. And somebody told me once, and I don't know who it was some coach somewhere at some point, but like basically 10% of the money that you make needs to get reinvested in marketing for your business.
Yeah.
And so whether that's, dropping off, things at people's houses, or a home buyer workshop that you're putting together, whatever, like treat it like a business, right?
Yeah.
When that commission check,
I mean, honestly, 10% is a minimum if you really think about it. it comes to like taking clients out to dinner even, and then you add it all up, it's probably more than 10%. But yes, at a minimum, you do.
Yeah, like you gotta reinvest in your business. And I think if you treat it like a business, then eventually you're gonna have the processes and the systems and the support in terms of a team that works for you and supports you. So for me, the way I've kind of found my balance is by having a team. And so I do work on the weekends, but I take every Wednesday off
Yeah.
because I know my whole team is in. Everybody else is there to answer any client questions, any realtor questions. It's kind of middle of the week,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of like not, but it gives me the opportunity to go to the dentist and run to the farmer's
Yeah.
market or whatever else I need to do. So I have a day when I'm actually not worried about my work because
That's
I know the team's got it covered, and then they get the weekends off, which they love because they've got little kids running around and they
right.
go, to parks and fun stuff. So I think it's as you grow your business, you can create a world where you can be the mom and the
Absolutely.
wife and the business owner and have good systems and processes that support you
Yeah.
and support your growth. And then you've got time to meditate and journal and dance and write and whatever it is that, speaking for myself, all the things I like to do. But I think it's important to make the time also to nurture yourself, so like make those appointments where you do get a massage,
Right.
you do go see the doctor,
Right. Right.
you check your hormone levels, like
Right.
all the things, because when you're so stressed out
And
all the
I
time.
I think also, again, like you started saying, find a team of women that will support you because we exist. I'm here.
Mhm,
Anytime I see a new realtor, I'm like, tell me what you need from me. And I
mhm,
tell all the clients I enjoy working with, whatever you need. I don't care if I'm the closing attorney in the transaction, you can call me. I'm available for you.
yeah,
Relationships are more important to me than a dollar. And I think you're the same way. Like it's all
mhm,
relationships. And so it's find your team, find women that can support you, and kind of, again, people that have been doing it for 10, 20 years can go, okay, here's how you set boundaries. Because I don't think when we're younger and new in our careers, we don't know how to set boundaries. That's kind
yeah,
of goes back to our earlier conversation, right? Set boundaries with people, know what you're willing to do and not do. Yes, you're here to help the clients along, but those boundaries are going to help you be successful for 10 other people. Sometimes you need to be able to do that for more people than just the one person that might be draining your
mhm,
energy or whatever. But that's another good tip for young professionals or just women in this workforce. Find other women
yeah.
to support you, go to networking groups that are surrounded by women, and help each other grow, because that's really what we all need to do for each other.
Yes, I agree. In general, I think that it's an amazing opportunities. It's an amazing business to be in. And I feel super fortunate. I don't know if this is the same in other cities, but I feel like here in Atlanta, especially in town, dude, we have like some of the
Yeah.
best. Like you were saying, we have so many good people that have been in the business for a really long time, and also new people coming into the business that are just powerhouses.
Yeah.
So feel super lucky, and I love that I got to spend a little bit of time picking your brain and kind
Yeah.
of seeing, looking under the hood.
Well, and on the last note of what you're saying too, there are still great opportunities in real estate
Yeah.
today. Don't let the news in the market scare anyone who's listening to this who might be thinking about getting in or is new to it. There is always opportunity in real estate. Again, if both of us can come out from before 2008 and come through it and still be doing this, as can many people tell you that they've been doing that, there is always opportunity. You just pivot and shift and you find the new way.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't the market is changing, the market is shifting right under our feet, but the basics are still there, right? You talk to
Right.
your database, you do your prospecting, you find the opportunities wherever there are, because there are people that are always gonna have to move, right? They're
Right.
gonna need to shift because of the school, whether their interest rate right now is at 2% or at 7%, they need a new school for their kid who just got diagnosed as a dyslexic, or maybe they
Right.
need to move for jobs, or they need to be closer to their parents. Like shifts are still happening in people's lives, and it's just a different market. And I think that just staying true to like a keeping your mindset clean. Don't buy into the panic. It's all
Right.
good. It's a time to reevaluate your systems. You've got all the time now. You can tinker with your database, enter all your people, set yourself up. So when things gear up again, you're
As
going
they will.
to be ready. They will for sure. Well, thank you, Mehrnush. You're the best. This was
Thank you.
super
That was
fun,
fun.
and
Appreciate your time.
absolutely. So how do people look you up on social media, and what's a good way to get in touch with you?
So on social media, we my handle is still Blue Ink Title, so you can always find me there. That was the name of my original company before the merger with Gannett. And then if you're looking for my current email address, it'll be saadat@gannickpc.com, and you can find other information for all of our 11 locations in Atlanta at gannickpc.com.
Sounds perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, Manush.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Agent Upgrade Podcast. If you are an agent looking for a new mortgage lender, start with Jasmine at jasmineteam.com. If you want to learn about real estate investing and working with investors, check in with Alan at thehouseofac.com. See you next time on Agent Upgrade.